Hey everyone, we're about to watch the new Paladin. I've got my coffee here, I've got my notes that I made. So I have the Player's Handbook. Anyone who's not familiar with this channel already knows that, but I've made notes comparing what we're going to have compared to the old Player's Handbook as well as to the playtest. So I've got that there handy. So I can't talk about anything they don't reveal. So I will be watching very carefully to see what they reveal, and then I can talk about it. And so, buckle up, and we're going to talk about the Paladin. And one thing I should mention is the Paladin is generally recognized as one of the more powerful classes in D&D. So I would say it got less. So if you watched yesterday, the fighter was just a big bag of goodies. From the new features to enhanced features to enhanced subclasses. The Paladin is a bit more of a mixed bag.
One of the things you'll notice as a Paladin player immediately when you see the new Player's Handbook is that your spellcasting has moved from level 2 to level 1. And so you will begin being able to cast spells right away. And this also has a carry-on effect for multiclassing, that if you multiclass now, you will get more slots out of the Paladin part of your multiclass mix than you did before.
Yeah, so this is not new from the playtest, but it did carry through. So Paladins are going to get their spells at level 1, and if you multiclass out of Paladin, you half your level to determine spellcasting, but previously you rounded down, and now you will be rounding up.
When we talk about the Ranger, we'll see that a similar thing happened there. We did this because we wanted Paladin players to start learning how to use their spells right away, because spells are a key part of the Paladin's kit, and having it at second level before meant you were waiting to learn how to use one of the most important parts of your class. So now there's no wait. You start right away at first level learning some spells, which you'll then need to know all about when you get to level 2 and you start doing Divine Smite.
Yeah.
At level 1, you don't just...
Yeah, so I guess he just revealed it there. In the playtest, Divine Smite was a spell. The people had mixed feelings about it. I thought they might get rid of it. They did not get rid of it. Paladin Smite is indeed a spell, which means, technically speaking, you could cast Divine Smite at level 1, but at level 2, it will be built into the Paladin class.
Just get spellcasting now, though. You still get Lay on Hands, that iconic ability that Paladins have to heal themselves and others. And you also get Weapon Mastery. And so that means that Paladins, too, are going to get to play with all of the fun that Weapon Mastery brings to any of our classes focused on weapon use. Now, when you get to then level 2, there's more new stuff waiting for you. And at first, you might look at the class feature table for the Paladin and see, oh, fighting style, I had that before. But there's actually a lot of change hiding in there, good updates for the Paladin, because now, when you choose your fighting style as a Paladin, you are no longer restricted to a curated list like the Paladin was in 2014. You now have access to the full fighting style list that fighters also have access to.
Okay, interesting.
And
Yeah, so the fighting styles are now feats, but that's neither here nor there. It makes no mechanical difference whether they're feats or class features. But the Paladin can access all the fighting styles just like the fighter can. So there are some additional options opened up for them.
And you also have the option to forego choosing any of those and instead learning some cleric cantrips.
Oh, okay.
So if you decide that
Yeah, so if you own Tasha's Cauldron of Everything and you've looked at the optional class features for Paladin, there was a fighting style called Blessed Warrior. Essentially, that's been worked into the new Player's Handbook.
rather be more of a spell hurling Paladin, rather than leaning harder into your weapon use, you now have that option in the fighting style feature at level 2.
Okay.
This is a part of a theme of us providing more customization options where it made sense in each of the classes. You also now get a feature called Paladin's Smite. This was called Divine Smite in 2014. It's now called Paladin's Smite because it actually now gives you two things. In 2014, this feature allowed you to use the class's iconic Divine Smite ability where you burn a spell slot and deal a bucket load of extra damage to a target you just hit. Divine Smite still does that. Divine Smite, though, has now been packaged as a spell. And then the Paladin Smite feature, in addition to giving you that spell and allowing you to always have it prepared, also now lets you cast Divine Smite once per day without burning a spell slot. So what that means is Paladins now every day get a freebie Divine Smite. And so that's going to relieve a little bit some of the pressure on their spell slots. We did this so that Paladins could certainly just use all their spell slots to cast Divine Smite, but we also wanted to make it just a smidge easier for Paladins to cast some of their other spells if they so choose.
Perfect.
Now,
Yeah, so if you were following the playtests, you might recall that there was a Paladin Smite in the final Paladin playtest, I believe. That all the Paladins, Paladin Smite, as well as all the various Smite spells, were kind of rebalanced and tweaked, and then the Paladin automatically prepared a big list of them. And then they could choose any of the ones that they were appropriate level to cast and do it once for free. That isn't the case anymore. So if you want those other smite spells, you are going to have to prepare them. You're only getting the Divine Smite for free, and you can only cast Divine Smite for free now. And Smite, there's just no question Smite is weaker than it was in 2014, because it is going to use a bonus action to Smite. So you can only do it once on your turn, and you're doing other things with your bonus action. So it is definitely weaker than it was, which means that in that regard, the Paladin has gotten weaker. So, like I said, not like the fighter. It's not all goodies. Some stuff has been scaled back, and Smite is one of them.
when we get to level 3, where
it's actually the main one. Other rebalancing is far more minor, but the change to Smite is pretty dramatic.
you pick your subclass, you also get Channel Divinity, and here there's a really nice upgrade for Paladins in terms of the number of uses of Channel Divinity they get. It used to be that a Paladin got exactly one use of Channel Divinity, and then that was restored upon taking a short or a long rest. Now you get 2 uses to start, and every time you take a short rest, you get 1 use back, and then when you take a long rest, you get all your uses back. But then even better, that 2 turns into a 3 when you hit level 11. So you're going to be able to use your Channel Divinity far more often than you could before.
Yeah, so in 2014, a 20th level Paladin had 1 Channel Divinity per short rest. So that has been significantly boosted. And Channel Divinity for Paladin is only for your subclass features.
We've also taken the Divine Sense feature that Paladins used to have and turned it into a Channel Divinity option. And in the process, we've also made it last quite a bit longer. So if you do decide to use Divine Sense, rather than it lasting only 1 round, which was how long it lasted in 2014, it now is going to last 10 minutes. And we increased its duration, not only because you're now using your Channel Divinity on it, but also to make it easier to use, particularly in social interaction and exploration scenes. The classic circumstance of the paladin is at the Queen's Ball and is trying to figure out which of these partygoers is actually a demon or an undead in disguise.
Right.
This longer duration will allow the paladin to get a bit more bang for their buck when they decide to use Divine Sense. We also
Okay, so I'm watching what he says very carefully because I can't talk about any specifics that he doesn't reveal. And so he's talking about Divine Sense, and he brought up two things. Number one, it's going to use a Channel Divinity. So that's a downgrade because Divine Sense used to have its own pool of uses. Not that it was very good, but yeah, at least it didn't use up your Channel Divinity. Now it will. He also talked about how the duration has increased, which it has. There is another improvement Divine Sense got that he didn't talk about. That's pretty important. The Divine Sense in 2014, I think, is a crap ability. And this new one, I could see using it. So I can't tell you the specifics, but there was something that made the 2014 version not very good. That is gone now.
At level 5 have made it so that all paladins now get the Find Steed spell for free. They always have it prepared, and they can cast it once per day without expending a spell slot. Find Steed is an iconic paladin spell, and we decided we did not want a paladin to have to use up one of their spell preparation slots on that spell.
Right.
And we also wanted you to be able to use it at least once per day without having to use one of your precious few slots, since paladins and rangers do have fewer spell slots than many of our other spellcasters. And then on top of that, the Find Steed spell has been completely redesigned for the paladin so that the steed can now get more powerful depending on the level of the spell slot you use to cast the spell. And the steed is now not reliant on particular animal stat blocks, but instead has a stat block all its own, specially designed for the paladin.
Perfect.
So you really feel like you are summoning this otherworldly creature that isn't just a horse or some other creature that you're riding around on, but is this otherworldly being that is there to work with you really as a companion, as this faithful companion there to assist the paladin and the paladin's friends.
That's amazing.
I am hoping that with this change, many paladins will feel more empowered to have these really cool companions present on their adventures.
And that's, again, living out that fantasy and honing in on that wish fulfillment of wanting to smite more and also getting that steed like sooner and easier.
Absolutely. We also have...
Okay, so in terms of, it's called Faithful Steed is the name of the feature. As he said, you're going to be able to cast Find Steed once for free. You're going to prepare it for free as well. Of course, when you cast for free, you're casting at always the lowest possible level. And as he mentioned, you have a template, and that template improves if you cast it with a higher spell slot. So you may actually want to expend a spell slot to cast Find Steed if you want the enhancements. And if you were following the playtest, then you already saw a redesigned Find Steed, and I have not yet compared the spell in the Player's Handbook to the one in the playtest to make sure that they're the same or look for any differences, but it looked pretty darn close when I read it.
In the core class, given all paladins a new feature called Abjure Foes, and this gives all paladins a juicy use for their channel divinity. A number of our paladin subclasses in the past had a channel divinity option that was very similar to Abjure Foes, but it was sort of slightly changed in a number of the subclasses. We decided to take those variants create a universal version that all paladins are happy to have, and now built it into the base class.
Okay.
And Observe Foes was in the playtest, and it is pretty much, there's some wording changes, but it's very similar to the playtest.
We also did some under-the-hood work on the Paladin.
Oh, and I should mention that is also a Channel Divinity use. So you're getting additional ways to use Channel Divinity.
Aura. Partly by turning it into a single aura that gains additional abilities. Previously, the Paladin, and particularly based on whatever subclass you ended up picking, would end up having multiple different auras, some of them with different radii.
Yeah.
And it could.
Yeah, so what the example that I immediately think of that I assume he's referring to is the Glory Paladin. So the Glory Paladin had a 10-foot Aura of Protection. Aura of Protection, for those who don't know, is the one that gives the saving throw bonuses to the Paladin and people within 10 feet of them, eventually 30 feet of them. And then the Glory Paladin had this thing where they had a 5-foot aura, where if you started your turn within this 5-foot aura, you got a speed boost. But if you were 10 feet from them, you'd get the saving throw enhancement, but not the speed boost. And didn't make a lot of sense. So those kinds of things, basically, if the Paladin has anything that would be applied to an aura, it's just one aura that gives multiple things.
Could start getting quite confusing keeping track of like all of your different auras and how big is this one versus that one.
Yeah.
So we sort of cleaned up the whole aura game for paladins by, in the base class and then also in the subclasses that are in this book, all of the auras that used to be different auras before are now all one aura that simply gains new functionality. So it's going to be far easier for the Paladin to keep track of what's going on because the Paladin now has just one aura that just gains cool new features as the Paladin goes up in level. The aura also makes use of a new type of area of effect that we've introduced in the new Player's Handbook. And it is an area of effect that has been in the game for the last 10 years, but didn't have a name. And we decided to finally give it a name. And I'm bringing it up now while talking about the Paladin, because it's specifically for things like auras and other effects that emanate outward from a particular creature or object. And so this area of effect is called the emanation.
Yeah, so you're going to see the word emanation all through the Player's Handbook. And so Paladin Aura is an emanation. Spirit Guardians is an emanation. And it basically means aura, which is a terminology thing.
We've seen it all over the place in 5th edition over the last 10 years. Basically, anytime you read a feature or a monster ability or a spell that talked about creatures within a certain radius being affected by...
Yeah, and he's bringing up a point that I think, as much as it's just a terminology change, the fact that they used the term radius before was not good, because it what it would do is, so if you had something that was an aura that had a 15-foot radius around you, well, 15-foot radius would suggest it's 30 feet across, but it wasn't, because it's 15 feet from you this much on one side and 15 feet from you this much from the other side, but didn't include your space. So it would be more than 30 feet. And that was confusing for a lot of players, because the radius normally means one thing. And so giving it its own term, I think, works. I think they could have just gone with aura. I don't think they necessarily needed to use emanation, but emanation's fine.
Something that was basically an emanation. It just wasn't called that.
Yeah.
So we have now given that area of effect a name and given it its own definition, just as the other areas of effect in our system have definitions. And you can now find all of those definitions in the Player's Handbook's rules glossary. One other thing in the Paladin that I wanted to chat about, because this is the first of the spellcasting classes that we have talked about, is the new approach to spell lists. So each spellcasting class now has its spell list inside the class description. So rather than make...
Yeah, and I made this prediction, actually. I did a video a little bit ago, I might as well link it up above, where I did predictions for the new Player's Handbook, and some of them were right and some of them weren't right. I think I did pretty good. But one of the things I predicted was that they weren't going to have the class lists or the class spell lists by spells anymore. I figured they would move them into the class section, and I suggested that one possibility was they'd put them in the class themselves, and that is what has happened. So if you open up the wizard and you want to know what your wizard spell list is, you're going to go to the wizard class, and that's where you will see it.
Making a paladin or a ranger
Yeah.
or a warlock or
Go
another
all the way
spell.
back to the end of the book.
Instead, it's right there in the class description. But in addition to that, we have worked to make the spell list that's in your class more useful for you. And we've done that by not only giving you all the spells by name, but also every spell's school of magic is listed. We also tell you if the spell on your list requires concentration. We also tell you if it's a ritual, and we also tell you if it has a specific component that you must have to cast the spell. So in those cases, when a...
And that's not, like, it just in terms of setup. The reason I predicted that spell lists would move to the classes is because it makes more sense, just from an organization standpoint, and from, your view as a player reading this book, trying to figure out how this game works. And I'm playing this class called a wizard. I know it gets spells, but where are they? So it's there. But also from a more experienced player's viewpoint, especially people who, like myself, who like to do character builds, as a reference guide, those class lists are going to be way more useful by giving you the pieces of information that he just mentioned.
Component has a specific cost, or the spell consumes the component, you must have that component to cast that spell. And so we now tell you in your class spell list if the spell has a required component. So that you now have sort of one-stop shopping for your spells, and you can see at a glance what the spell's school of magic is, if it requires concentration, if it's a ritual, and if it has a specific component you must have to cast it.
This is all meant for if you're a player and you play paladins or warlocks, you have less pages you need to traverse to understand what you have and what you need.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The paladin subclasses have all received some fun updates, starting with the Oath of Devotion.
Yeah, let's start with the Oath of Devotion.
I have to say, the Oath of Devotion is my favorite of the updates for the subclasses. There's some quality of life stuff there that is very nice. That shouldn't be a big surprise if you read the playtest, but I was not. Well, I'll wait for him to talk about
what is new here?
One of the biggies right away is the Oath of Devotion can now activate their Sacred Weapon feature as part of the attack action rather than sacking their entire action to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a huge quality of life increase. So the 2014 Player's Handbook Oath of Devotion had to use an action to activate that weapon. And so that meant on the first round of combat, when you wanted to use it, you did basically nothing. And, the first round is not the round I want to be giving up. So I never used that feature. And then now, I think in the playtest they might have made it a bonus action. Let me see if I wrote that down. I didn't write that down. I think it might have used a bonus action in the playtest. It doesn't even use a bonus action anymore. So yeah, big improvement. And it's just as good as it was. It's just easier to activate.
In the past, it was so punishing to have to use your entire action to activate it that many Paladin players just decided not to use it. Now, as a part of attacking, you can simply decide, I'm going to activate this. We have also replaced in the Oath of Devotion the feature that was previously called Purity of Spirit with a new feature called Smite of Protection. And what this now does is when you use your Divine Smite, because the Oath of Devotion Paladin is the classic knight in shining armor who is there to protect others, it now means that when you use Divine Smite, you and your allies in your aura of protection have half cover for a limited time. So you have this magical protection that gives you the full benefits of half cover, even if you're standing out in the open, as long as your friends are in that aura of.
So that's an entirely new feature, and like you said, it replaced a previous feature called Purity of Spirit. What Purity of Spirit did is the Devotion Paladin was to be considered under the effects of a protection from good and evil spell all the time. That's gone. You don't get that anymore. Instead, you get this, which is more about really helping your allies within your aura. And so when you use your Divine, but only when you use your Divine Smite. You got to use your Divine Smite. And if you use it, then they get this half cover benefit in your aura
of protection. And so this gives a nice feeling of being a guardian, even when you're blasting your foes with Divine Smite. We've also made it so that the level 20 ability, Holy Nimbus, is now usable as a bonus action instead of an action, because we want.
Yeah, so it was a bonus action in the playtest as well, and that has carried forward to the Player's Handbook, because the old one used an action as well. So you had Sacred Weapon using an action, you had Holy Nimbus using one. If you were a Devotion Paladin, 20th level, you could be spending the first 2 turns of combat just prepping. So and the duration was very short. So yeah, this is just a better ability now. And he isn't going to mention this, but I'll mention this, is wording clarifications on some features as well are very nice on the Paladin, including on the Oath of Devotion, things that, had certain interactions and you didn't know for sure how it was supposed to work, and the wording is just much more clearly set out now.
I want you to be able to activate it and then keep going on your turn, rather than essentially spending an entire turn getting ready to do something. And there are a number of places in the Player's Handbook where abilities that really are just turning on a state have often now been changed from being an action to a bonus action, or in some cases, like with Sacred Weapon in Oath of Devotion, don't require an action or a bonus action at all, and instead.
So should point out too that when we're talking about preparation, you only have one bonus action. So if you are a 20th level Oath of Devotion Paladin, you can now use your Capstone feature as a bonus action and Sacred Weapon without using, just by taking the attack action, and you can act on the first turn of combat with all your stuff activated.
Are absorbed into another action. Because again, in many cases, we want you to get to the fun faster. The Oath of Devotion is joined by the Oath of Glory. This, for me, is often the Paladin who, if they were in a movie, would look at the camera, have impossibly white teeth with a little sparkle on them as they smile. The Oath of Glory appeared previously in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, as well as in Mythic Odysseys of Theros.
Yeah, that's where it first came from.
And it has evolved a bit on its way to the Player's Handbook. And two of the main evolutions that I think are worth talking about here. One is the Peerless Athlete feature now lasts for an hour rather than 10 minutes.
Oh, that's good.
This feature is especially useful in exploration contexts.
Exactly, yeah.
And so we wanted it to be more useful in that pillar of adventure. The other big change is to Aura of Alacrity. The new feature here is that it not only benefits your allies who start their turn in your Aura of Protection, but also if they enter that aura.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned that. Okay, so Aura of Alacrity got 2 improvements. Because, as I mentioned earlier, it used to be a 5-foot range. Now it's 10 feet and eventually 30 feet. The old one eventually scaled to 10 feet. And then the second one is who benefits, because it used to be people who started their turn within 5 feet of you. Now they just need to get within 10 feet of you on their turn, and they will get that speed boost.
On their turn. This is a really major change because before, the Aura of Alacrity, which speeds you and your allies up, it's all about the Paladin allowing you all to charge forward into battle or some other situation more quickly.
And of course, Aura of Alacrity works for your mount,
It was actually extremely difficult sometimes for it to even do anything for your friends because they had to time it so that they started their turn in your aura, which can actually be more complicated than it sounds when everyone is taking turns in a particular order. This change now means that no matter when a person's turn is relative to the Paladins, and no matter where they are on the battlefield, as long as they make sure to pass through the aura on their turn, they will suddenly get the speed boost.
That's super helpful. Otherwise, really weird on the battlefield.
Yes, where it's sort of, you can have a whole lot of hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
One other thing I would love to mention about Oath of Glory that relates actually to all of the Paladin subclasses is that we have vetted their oath spell lists in each subclass. And so players are going to see, not only in the oath spell list, but also when you get to the cleric, the domain spell list, and in the warlock, the patron spell list. All of these lists have been vetted and in many cases updated with different spell options. I'm thinking of this now while we're talking about the Oath of Glory, particularly because the Oath of Glory list in getting updated even includes a brand new spell appearing in this player's handbook for the first time.
And it's one of the higher Paladin level spells, so you're not going to get it anytime soon. But yes, there is a brand new spell. There is also one other spell that got changed, which is, it was an okay spell for another okay spell.
So when you reach level 17 as a Paladin, and if you have the Oath of Glory subclass, you get a brand new spell in the game called Yolan's Regal Presence. And this is a spell created by the Queen of the Elves in the world of Greyhawk, and it allows the Paladin and anyone else who casts this.
Am I the only one who thinks her hairstyle looks a little weird? I just think it does.
Spell to, as it says in the name, have an extraordinarily regal presence that will cause people to fall down on their knees and also potentially take psychic damage.
I think her hairstyle makes me think of the 80s, where you just have a ton of hair.
From just how glorious you are.
Perfect.
But I wanted to bring that up because I hope everyone will take
Maybe it's
time,
hair envy.
When they come to their favorite subclass, if it's a subclass that had a little spell list, take a look at that list, because you're going to find often that not only have some of the spells been swapped, one spell for another, but sometimes the new spell that's on the list is a brand new spell for the game.
Perfect. So we have the Oath.
So he didn't mention what it was, but I will also mention their capstone got an improvement as well, the Glory Paladin.
Oath of the Ancients Paladin, this is one of my favorites. It feels like the Green Knight. It's a very unique feel from any other class or subclass.
And when we created the Oath of the Ancients originally for the 2014 Player's Handbook, it really was in answer to the question, what would a paladin look like who had been a part of elven culture
Yeah.
or, another culture that maybe is less sort of knight in shining armor, but still, would have these noble oaths and have a lot of the dedication that we associate with paladins, but again, more of a nature or or druidic or elven aesthetic. And so the answer to that was the Oath of the Ancients. The art for it is wonderful, as is the art for all of the subclasses in the book. And we have made some enhancements to the Oath as it has migrated into the new Player's Handbook. One of those is that the subclass's aura of warding at level 7 now just straight up gives people in your aura resistance to necrotic, psychic, and radiant damage.
So the old version gave everyone in your aura. This is, I think, one of the more well-known auras. It gave everyone in your aura resistance to the damage of spells. Things like that, where it's like not a damage type that you're getting resistance to, are gone. I think I'm trying to think if there's any case where you get resistance to damage without it mentioning the type, and nothing comes to mind. I think they've just gotten rid of that entirely. So instead, you're going to get resistance to 3 damage types, the ones he just mentioned. And I'm sure people will have opinions on that. So go ahead and let us know what they are down below.
Because this paladin is all about protecting people from, in some cases, foes from beyond.
Yeah.
And so that's why their aura now will protect you from the magic of, necrosis, which we associate it with the negative energy plane, radiant damage, which is from the positive energy plane, and then psychic damage, which we often associate with the far realm.
And radiant damage can feel also very creepy. It doesn't have to feel like celestial and happy and good. This can also be something, feel like radioactive.
Exactly.
So it's not always a benevolent or natural source.
Exactly. Just as necrotic damage is not always malevolent.
Right.
Because death can be it is a natural part of the world. Also, in the subclass, we have increased the range of the subclass's Nature's Wrath ability, which is their entanglement ability.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad he went back to this, because he started on level 7. I'm like, he's not going to talk about Nature's Wrath. Nature's Wrath on the 2014 Oath of the Ancients Paladin is maybe the worst channel divinity of any of the paladins. I'm trying to think if there's any that I considered worse. It was basically something you would never ever do. And it has been, and in the playtest we saw this as well. It's been significantly enhanced.
if you love playing an Oath of the Ancients Paladin and tangling people up in roots, well, now you can do that even easier because the range of that ability has been extended. We have also, in the subclass's Undying Sentinel ability, made it so that if you pop back from 0, you don't pop back with just 1 hit point.
Yeah.
And just as we did in the Barbarian, you now pop back with a bunch of hit points so that you don't get knocked down immediately after you popped back up.
Perfect.
Those are the...
Yeah, so the old version was basically, it worked like the half-orc had the same kind of thing. I think it was Relentless Endurance for them. But at 15th level, you got a feature where if you were knocked to 0 hit points, you would go to 1 hit point instead, once per long rest. And they've enhanced it now that you get a bunch of hit points back when that happens.
Main changes here, and really just our effort to make this great subclass just even better at the fun stuff it was already doing.
I love that even the subclasses that are very tried and true are still getting...
By the way, Oath of the Ancients was another Paladin subclass who had a short duration 20th level feature that required an action to use. And so I'll let you know that just as we saw with Devotion, they have changed that, so it's not the case anymore.
a facelift, an upgrade, and gain something extra to do.
And that is true of every subclass in the book, that no matter how solid it was, it's getting some new upgrade. And so that leaves us then with the Oath of Vengeance. This was another subclass that was super solid, but still has some fun new toys within it. One of the biggies, because it affects the subclass's most iconic ability, its Vow of Enmity, is you no longer have to use your bonus action to activate your Vow of Enmity. This you can now use simply as a part of the attack action.
So basically, it's just like Sacred Weapon for Oath of Devotion, and same thing, right? If you get to 20th, and I know a lot of you are going to be thinking, I'm never going to get to 20th level in any campaign I ever play in, and fair enough, but it's part of the rules, so I still cover it, and some people play 20th level. I sometimes play 20th level, so it matters to me somewhat. So same thing, if you're 20th level, you can be able to use all your stuff right away.
Wow.
And we've also made it so that if the target of your Vow of Enmity perishes, you now have a window of time where you can transfer it to somebody else. Because it used to be...
Yeah, so Vow of Enmity before, it was a bonus action to use. You declared a target within 10 feet. 10 feet. And then you had advantage on attacks against them for a minute. And it used your channel divinity, your one and only channel divinity. So the new one now has a number of enhancements. One of the big ones is, or probably the biggest one, is that you can now transfer it. So if you drop your first target, then you can pick a different target, transfer it, and get advantage against them. So you're going to get more use out of your Vow of Enmity. Plus, of course, you have multiple channel divinity uses now that you didn't have before. And there's another enhancement as well that I won't reveal unless he does.
You would place it on somebody, and if they got felled quickly enough,
right,
it's like, well,
I guess that's done. Or someone else kills them, yeah.
And so now, similar to how Hunter's Mark functions, where you can move that spell around, you can now also move around your Vow of Enmity. At level 20, with their Avenging Angel ability, we've made two major enhancements. One of them is you can now activate it as a bonus action instead of an action.
Thank you.
And it lasts for an entire hour. And we did this because this feature includes flight.
Yeah, okay.
And we wanted the Oath of Vengeance Paladin to be able to use that flight.
Okay. I'm just going to pause for a bit here. There's going to be an edit because I think he has just said something that's incorrect, or I have made a mistake, which is possible. So give me a minute and I'll be right back. Okay, so I think he has made a mistake. I have just double-checked my notes, and I believe he's made a mistake. I'm going to replay what he said just to make sure I heard what I thought I heard.
One of them is you can now activate it as a bonus action
Okay, so that part is correct.
Instead of an action.
Thank you.
And it lasts for an entire hour.
That is not what it says in the version of the Player's Handbook I have. I can't reveal specifics, but that is not correct. And the thing is it was an hour in the old Player's Handbook. I'm 99% sure. Let me verify. So we're going to go to Paladin. Oath of Vengeance, Avenging Angel. For 1 hour, you gain the following benefit. So it was an hour before. It is no longer an hour. So he has made a mistake there.
And we did this because this feature includes flight.
Yeah, okay.
And we wanted the Oath of Vengeance Paladin to be able to use that flight to pursue somebody. And so watch out.
Go right into evil Superman mode.
Yes.
And hunt them down. The new Player's Handbook is
All right, yeah. So unless they have changed the Player's Handbook since they gave it, but I only got it a week ago. So I can't imagine they've changed it at this point. So yeah, I think he just screwed up there. And that said, Avenging Angels duration is fine, but it's not an hour. That what he said there is inaccurate. So that's the Paladin. So like I said, some things got worse, and there are other things that weren't mentioned, but there are some features from subclasses that you used to be able to do that you can no longer do. So the Paladin, a bit more of a mixed bag than the Fighter and the Barbarian that we're going to see tomorrow, which is all goodies. This time, Divine Smite is worse. Where there's some features that aren't there, and there is some stuff that's been kind of toned down. Then there are other things that are just new goodies. So Weapon Mastery is new, Abjure Elements Abjure Foes is new, and then there are enhancements. So things like Sacred Weapon that you can do as part of the attack action, all the capstones being able to do them as bonus actions. And multiple uses of Channel Divinity. I think the Paladin is probably a little bit more powerful now than 2014, but it is not cut and dry. And so I do think, like, when we look at the Paladin, which was up here, versus, Fighters and Barbarians, which were a little more lower down, we're going to see more of a narrowing on that in the new Player's Handbook. Whether you like that or not, that's subjective. I'm happy about that. I want the difference in power levels between classes to be narrowed. And this is one case where you have something on the more powerful end. And so it didn't get the goodies that the stuff that isn't on the powerful end got. That's the Paladin. Tomorrow I will be covering the Barbarian when they release that video, and I'll get the reaction out as soon as possible. Hope you join me. Talk to you later.